So with the release of Blue Beetle last week, let's do a DCEU tier ranking. Well, it's no secret that DC doesn't have the best track record, especially when you compare it to the MCU and their past when it comes to phases 1 through 3. DC has had basically no structure since the beginning. With Man of Steel back in 2013, everything has been a scrambled egg. But now, thankfully, we have James Gunn coming in to save the day with his release of the newest Superman movie in a couple of years. But in the meantime, let's just dwell on the past. Let's talk about the DCEU. Eventually, it's going to become the DCU, apparently. And let's just do a tier list with every single DCEU movie from Man of Steel to Blue Beetle. So let's start this tier list with, like I said, Man of Steel, which I think belongs in A tier, a Zack Snyder film. Yes, folks, a Zack Snyder film will go in A tier. From my perspective, Man of Steel is epic from a cinematic standpoint. It takes an emotional toll on you. Hans Zimmer did an amazing job with the score. I love Henry Cavill as Clark despite the understandable complaints about his version of this character. And Michael Shannon as General Zod was DC's best villain at the time since Heath Ledger's Joker. Also, can we please get this iteration of Russell Crowe back into form? Because I don't know what happened to that guy. As for BVS, I'm going to put it in C tier. Zack Snyder should have made a Batman movie before this movie came out, but instead they just rushed it and made a Batman versus Superman movie without having an origin story for Batman in the first place. For a movie, it's okay, but they should have done a Batman movie first. And why was Lex Luthor in this film along with Doomsday? There was no need for either of them. Plus, the rest of the movie is just set up for Zack Snyder's Justice League movie, which doesn't matter anymore because James Gunn is in charge. So, DC, you really messed up there. I'm also going to put Suicide Squad from 2016 in C tier because it's a dark and bland movie. It's nothing like the James Gunn version of the Suicide Squad. I'll be honest, I haven't seen this movie since it was released, but there's no fun being had here. I don't feel the need to watch it again. While El Diablo was the best part of the film, I felt Jared Leto's Joker was an unnecessary inclusion. This film as a whole is just extremely forgettable, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again. On the other hand, the first Wonder Woman is one of the best DCEU movies, so I'm going to put that in A tier alongside Man of Steel. It's a great one. The theme song is excellent. Gal Gadot and Chris Pine have excellent chemistry. The action is exciting. They nailed all the World War I stuff. I even found the surprise villain as a good twist. For a Wonder Woman standalone movie, it's really good, but then few months later, I don't know what happened when it came to Joss Whedon's Justice League movie. It was a complete disaster. At first, when I watched it, I thought it was pretty good. But then I watched it again after watching Zack Snyder's Justice League. And, well, now I'm just going to put it in F tier because, why? And then about a year later, DC rebounded with Aquaman, which I'm going to put in B tier, the first movie that I'm putting in B tier on this tier list. It's long, pretty over the top, but at the same time, fun. The cast is one of the best of the DCEU, and it's adventurous, which I love. The villains are better than what we previously saw from DC at the time. And Jason Momoa has a lot of charisma as Aquaman. It's just a shame that the sequel will likely bomb when it comes out this December. After that was Shazam in 2019. I'll put that in B tier next to Aquaman. I thought the movie was pretty good, but not as good as so many people were saying back when it came out. It's light, it's not as difficult of a movie to comprehend. It has heart and plenty of humor, but it's nothing groundbreaking. I love Zachary Levi and the rest of the cast. It's maybe my favorite cast of characters in any movie from DC in recent years, but the film feels like it's trying to be too funny and too out of nowhere. I just don't buy that so many people would be okay with seeing a superhero in the real world going around a shopping mall. It never made that much sense to me. The film feels so out of the ordinary. I don't buy any of it. It's funny, it's hysterical, it's everything that a Shazam movie needs to be, but at the same time, I just don't think it's as good as so many people were saying it was back when it came out in 2019. And I'm somebody who lives in the city of Philadelphia. This movie took place in Philadelphia, so I should be a little bit more biased, but I just don't think it's as good as everyone was saying it was. Unfortunately, the next movie that came out was Birds of Prey in 2020. That is going in C tier next to both BVS and Suicide Squad, because not only have I not seen this movie since it came out in 2020, but it's one of the most forgettable movies I think I've ever seen. The film had terrible marketing. Nobody knew what this movie was. It's not by any means a bad movie, but it's not one I have any desire to watch ever again. So let's forget about it. Speaking of forgetting about it, Wonder Woman 1984. D tier. I think we all know why. I just don't understand how you go from Wonder Woman in 2017 to Wonder Woman 1984 from the same director and call this a sequel. It makes no sense. But luckily, Zack Snyder came back into the DC fold that next year and rebounded with Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I am going to put into, controversially, A tier, and rightfully so. A lot of people won't agree with this. I think many would probably put it in B tier, but I think it's one of DC's finest films of the last 20 years. Sure, it's way too long, but it feels like the proper team-up movie for the Justice League. Everyone is better here, including Cyborg, Flash, and even Steppenwolf. It's a huge improvement over Whedon's Justice League. It's filled with tons of emotion, it's epic, and the only way it could have gotten better outside of the questionable CGI is giving other characters their solo movies first. So I'd probably give Zack Snyder's Justice League more credit than most people out there, and part of that reason is because I'm not a comic book reader or a fan of the DC animated movies, so take that for what you will. But in 2021, DC was on a roll, and I found The Suicide Squad from James Gunn as DC's best movie in years. From my perspective, it's the best of the DCEU. It ditches the dark tone of the original and is invigorated with colorful characters and humor. The banter is hilarious, the action is quite possibly the best of the DCEU, and it helps that the film was given an R rating. James Gunn knows how to make great superhero team-up movies. DC was very intelligent to put this man at the front of their company. Next up in this tier ranking was Black Adam, and you know what? I did not mind this movie. I thought it was extremely over the top. Dwayne Johnson is Dwayne Johnson, like he is in every movie, but I had a lot of fun, especially with the Justice Society, so I'm going to put this in B tier right next to both Aquaman and the first Shazam. For a Dwayne Johnson movie, it's exactly what you would expect. The film is one of the most entertaining of the DCEU, but this is a Dwayne Johnson movie at the end of the day, so take that for what you will. Listen, at least we have the Justice Society. That's what I'm happy about. We may never see them again, but I'm okay with what we got from them in this film. Then we got Shazam 2. It was Fury of the Gods, which actually I just watched for the first time this week. I did not see it in theaters. I had no desire because the NCAA tournament was on TV that entire week when it was out. So I just decided that I cared more about the NCAA tournament than I did about Shazam 2. I will place Shazam 2 in B tier as well. This was a movie that started out pretty well when it came to like how Shazam is supposed to grow up and move on. You have to get a real job and go to college, do all the grown-up stuff. Everything you see from a superhero in other movies is not how a real-life superhero would go about living their daily life. And that's what I liked about the first half of this movie. But the second half of Shazam 2 goes off the rails and is no longer the same movie. Instead, it becomes this very generic superhero movie that we've seen a million times done over. There is a little bit of heart thrown in there at the end, which gave me some tears, I will admit. But I was disappointed by how this film felt so similar to the most generic superhero movies we've seen in the last 20 years. The only other saving grace of Shazam! Fury of the Gods is that it takes place in Philadelphia just like the first film, and they even show off the city a little bit more. Again, I'm from Philadelphia, I live here currently, and I love the city. I'm glad that this movie and the first movie show off my city in a lot of different ways that other films have not done so before, but the movie could have been better. I don't think this is a great movie by any means. It's disappointing that it bombed at the box office like so many DC films recently, but like at the same time, I had fun with it. I liked watching it. It's just not a great movie. Now, many of you might find this controversial because I know plenty of my friends think this movie sucks, but I'm going to throw The Flash in B tier as well. I thought this movie was pretty good. In fact, I think out of this B tier, it's the best of the bunch. I get the hate for this movie. The CGI is bad. Ezra Miller is a scumbag and one of the strangest people currently present on planet Earth. And the film could have bled into James Gunn's universe a bit better. There were certainly some missed opportunities. Plus, I'm not a huge fan of what they did during the finale. Though from beginning to end, Andy Muschietti made a very enjoyable film that acts as a crowd pleaser to fans and even has a little heart. So trust me, I get the hate. Ezra Miller is a terrible person, and the CGI is maybe the worst CGI in the last maybe 30 years. Yeah, that like goes back all the way to the 90s. The CGI in this movie is really bad, I will admit. But like, are those two reasons enough for me to call this movie bad itself? I don't think so. This is a good movie. I love seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman. It was great to see General Zod back, played by Michael Shannon. That was awesome. There were so many awesome moments in this movie that I think people were quickly forgetting about just because of the CGI and Ezra Miller as a person, not as an actor. So it's disappointing that this movie failed only because of those two reasons. Finally, the last DCEU movie until our very last one, if it ever comes out, Aquaman 2, we have Blue Beetle, the newest movie. I'm going to throw this in B tier too. I think the DCEU has done a fine job of crafting solid films ever since the disaster that was BVS. DC, give them credit. They only had a couple of train wrecks from like, 2016 up to 2020, but from like 2021 to recent, I think they've actually been pretty good. Blue Beetle should have been crap, and I thought it would be, but I was pleasantly surprised. They nailed the character, and his family is a huge focus too. They felt like a real family. Everything revolving around them was great. The action is energizing. The CGI is much improved to that of The Flash. Many people out there are saying it's a by-the-numbers origin story, and that may be the case. I'm not gonna deny that. But at the very least, it's better than everything the MCU has done movie-wise, except for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in the last two phases. And there you have it. That is my DCEU tier list. It was not the easiest list to compile because it has been quite an interesting journey the last couple of years with Warner Bros. And DC. But hey, maybe they'll finally get on the right track when James Gunn's movies start coming out, whenever that may be. So for those of you who also have a tier list, I'm curious what you think of mine, and if you have the time to share yours, definitely let me know down below in the comment section what your tier list is. And of course, as always, if you are new to my channel, click the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.